I will here present a theory of the relativity of happiness. Through irrefutable logic, it disproves many commonly held assumptions regarding happiness. Okay, so have you ever wondered why does people in poor countries state that they are happy to the same extent as people in rich countries when asked? So this is has been shown in many surveys that it is like that. Um, how come poor people can endure almost anything without committing suicide while lots of well-off people do not? That's also strange, right? Why is depression such a big problem in these times compared to historical times when historical times was often a lot harder than these times? Okay, those questions uh, will be answered here. So, some more conclusions from the theory presented in this movie. We will logically prove that genes hardly affect our happiness at all. We will logically explain why happiness is not achievable for a longer period of time. That is why drugs don't work in the long run, and more. So, the definition first, what we mean by happiness. We will here define happiness as positive emotions and positive experiences in general. So this is about the normal. This is the normal definition of happiness. Is I just define it to so that we're not having any doubt of what we're talking about. So we don't mean some sort of inner peace or tranquility or something like that. We mean happiness like gladness or something. Positive experiences. Okay. I gladly welcome every attempt to disprove the theory of relativity of happiness presented in this movie. So please, go ahead and try to disprove it. Problems with the existing theory of happiness. So there actually is no existing theory of happiness. It's just a bunch of assumptions, including assumptions about genes being involved and uh, assumptions about chemistry and happiness and so on. Uh, and here I will show some problems with those. So, is everlasting happiness at all possible? Oh, well, that is a serious question, and we will consider it seriously. Um, if happiness is chemical, then everlasting happiness must be possible as a result. Just add more of the right chemicals and one would experience constant happiness. So, constant happiness, yep. And drawn a little further, if happiness was chemical, then it would be possible to feed a child these chemicals from birth and he would have an entire life of constant happiness. Okay, I don't. I think that's absurd. Uh, so even if he is constantly tortured during his whole life, just give him the right chemicals and he would actually feel maximal happiness anyhow. So well, I think that's absurd, but I don't know about you. Anyhow, um, also heaven on earth could be created simply by giving everybody the right drug, according to these people who think chemistry happiness is chemical. So, regardless of the actual situation of the humans in the world, we could all be glad always. Um, So then we have the genetic problems of these these assumptions also. If one ascribes to some position that happiness is chemical, there's also the problem of the gene code. Yeah, so chemicals don't know when they are supposed to be released. It's supposedly genes decide when these chemicals are released somehow, I guess, is the normal assumption. So there must be some coding in the genes that tells us when to be happy and not, and when not to be happy. Now, that means that genes must have some way of knowing this, what kind of situation we are in, um, and thereby giving us happiness at the right moment in time. Okay, I don't know. I don't know how that would be even possible. Um, so I don't know how to argument pose an argument against it. But also, the gene code is estimated to consist of 10 megabytes of information. And as we all know, 10 megabytes is not a lot of in computer terms. It would not be, you could not make a very advanced program out of 10 megabytes that can determine what kind of situation a person is in and so on. So there are some problems with that. So these absurdities combined with the problems of poverty and happiness that I showed before, the questions, should be enough to question our normal ideas of happiness. Presenting the alternative. So to measure something, you need some sort of spectra to compare it with, right? You you need meters to determine the length of something, and some kind of weights to determine the weight of something, and yeah, at least you need to know something that meters exist, or you need a spectra to determine uh, the size of something or the amount of something. That is a measurement. Okay, determining what if that you are happy must be an act of measuring. Um yeah, it's some sort of amount of happiness. We know we can be unhappy and happy, and ranging between that is some sort of spectra of good and bad, uh, and determining if you are happy is measuring where on this spectra you are on at the moment. So, um, conclusion: when we measure if we are happy or not, uh, so there must be a spectra with which to compare our measurements on. Okay, so we will now have a look at the thermometer thought experiment to shed some light on things. It will be very helpful to explain the perspective of relative happiness. Okay, so imagine you lack the ability to determine temperature. We don't know why, maybe there's some problem with your body or something. Uh, in this case, you don't know if it's hot or cold. Moreover, imagine that you find an old fashioned thermometer pipe. It lacks any markings and numbers that can be used to signify what the temperature is, and you want to use this thermometer pipe. Okay, so you only have this pipe here um, to determine the temperature with. Uh, so what do you do? Well, probably you will make markings and so on the thermometer um, every day or so to signify different temperatures. Okay, so this means that you construct your own spectrum of temperature with your own markings, um, but it will work as a thermometer. You will know when you look at it if it's hot or cold. Um, okay. In time, you will have the markings to determine if the temperature is extreme or normal. It will work, but the information you have is relative. Okay. So, I guess you get the idea. This represents the way we construct our spectra of happiness in our minds. So we have concluded that there is a spectra of happiness, and the question is the spectra constructed or made by our genes, or is it generated by nature or by itself? Um, well, it is possible that it generates itself, but maybe it's generated by genes. So, so as you can see, genetically predetermined happiness equals that the thermometer has numbers and markings. So you can see here that this is a thermometer, an old-fashioned thermometer with marks and numbers, and it will also work, but we shall see the problem here. Now, we have not solved anything by constructing just personal uh, spectra of happiness, because if we would add extra liquid into these pipes here, it would have the same result. Um, it would really seem hotter there, and it would really seem hotter here. It's in the even in the long run. So that means that in both cases, eternal happiness is achievable, and drugs do work. So something is missing. Okay. Then we add forgetfulness. We have forgotten to take into account our fading memory. In the analogy of the thermometer, the markings last forever, equaling perfect memory. So, as you make these marks, probably they will last forever or for a long time, and making the thermometer undynamic and not relative. So, if we take into account forgetfulness in humans, we must change the thought experiment. So, to correct this, we must assume that the markings we add on the thermometer disappear after a while. Now we have the illustration of how our happiness spectra works. So, what happens now if we suppose that the old markings disappear after a while, and we add extra liquid into these pipes that equals some happiness creating drug, um, then of course eternal happiness or eternal, yeah, drugs would work in this case in the old-fashioned thermometer. But as we now that we have added forgetfulness into this thermometer, uh, the concept of normality will change as the old markings disappear. So we will, if we add liquid into this one, um, the normal the concept of normality will change to another level just after a while, given some time. So it is entirely flexible, and yeah. So because our memory is not perfect, our concept of normal happiness can change over time, and this is just why drugs don't work for any longer amount of time, and everlasting happiness is not achievable. So now we have a good explanation to why drugs don't work and why everlasting happiness is absurd. So we have found perfect. Uh, what we have found perfectly explains the phenomena listed in the introduction, and actually there is nothing that contradicts the theory as far as I can see. Everything seems to confirm this theory. Why do, so these are the questions stated in the beginning. The why poor people can be glad, and why um, people commit suicide when they are well off, and why depressions are such a big problem nowadays. Those questions are perfectly explained by this theory. So now that we have sorted everything out, we can have a look at this. Maybe you think what you have seen sounds something like Taoism, Yin Yang, or Buddhism or something. I don't know. I just take it to be indisputable truth. Hope you had a good time watching this. Thank you and bye.